David Horton, Professor of Law, UC Davis.
So, hi, my name is David Horton, and I teach at UC Davis.
What was your pathway to your current career?
I became a lawyer and interested in the law in kind of an unconventional way. My dad is a lawyer, which meant that for most of my life, being a lawyer was the last thing on earth that I wanted to do. But then I met the woman who's now my wife, who had always wanted to be a lawyer all her life and was actually going to law school. And I started visiting some of her classes, and I thought, wow, this is actually really interesting. This is such a cool way to learn about how the world works. So I ended up going to law school in part because I had enjoyed what I had seen in my now wife's classes, and also because it was a way that we could be in the same city at the same time. So I chased her to law school.
Why did you decide to specialize in contract law?
I got interested in contract law also through kind of an unconventional way. So every first year law student has to take contracts, it's a required class. And I had it in the very first semester of my very first year, and I hated it. I thought it was so boring and so dry. It just had no relationship to, what my life experience had been. But then when I got out into the real world and I was practicing as a lawyer, I kept coming across interesting issues that actually had to do with contract law. And especially, I was intrigued by the fact that, we form dozens of contracts every week. And most of the time, we don't read them. And very often they're contracts that are sort of foisted on us by large companies. You have to sign a contract, every time you sign up for cell phone service or download something off of the internet or rent a car. And I became really interested in the fact that we're subject to all these legal rules and regulations that we don't know about. And that's a problem that really sort of piqued my curiosity.
Why is it important for small business owners to understand contract law?
So I honestly can't think of another group of people who have more at stake than small business owners when it comes to contract law. Contracts are the backbone of our economy, and contracts are basically, the lifeblood of any business. And there's so much about contract law that's counterintuitive or surprising. So, for example, the first year, the first class of my contracts class every year, I always ask people, what they think a contract is. And a lot of people say things that actually aren't true. Like they believe that all contracts need to be in a writing or need to be signed. And that's actually false. You can bind yourself, even to really important deals, without actually putting anything on paper or without signing anything. So it's important to have a good sense of ways in which you can commit yourself in the future to perform a certain obligation. It's also counterintuitive to learn about the rules that govern the interpretation of contracts. So even though you can form a contract orally in most circumstances, when it comes to interpreting what the words of a contract that you have formed mean, courts kind of come at it from the opposite perspective, where they place tremendous emphasis on the words of a written contract if you do have a contract that eventually is reduced to writing. So one of the problems that I saw all the time when I was a practicing lawyer and when I was working for a judge is you'd have two small business owners who engaged in extensive oral negotiations and then signed a written contract that didn't necessarily reflect what they discussed. And the law is very hostile to looking at previous conversations when the parties then end up memorializing their agreement in a writing. So this is just an indication of one of the situations in which it's very important to be aware of what your legal rights are as a small business owner.
What would you tell people considering a career in law or contract law?
To be totally honest, and I know this sounds a little bit cheesy, but the law is like one of the saving graces of my life. I love the law. I think it's important. I think it can make the world a better place. I think it's intellectually fascinating. And I think learning about the law is just a terrific way to learn about the way the world works. So if you are interested in the law, I think it's definitely worthwhile to kick the tires a little bit and think about law school seriously, because even though law school is not for the faint of heart, it's very challenging. I think I learned more during my 3 years of law school than I did in like all the other years of my education combined. So it's really a wonderful, and fulfilling career in that way. Um, in terms of what you can do as a lawyer, if you specialize in something like contract law, one of the things that people commonly think about when they think about lawyers is that lawyers come in when parties are fighting and they litigate and they are like adversarial. But a lot of what lawyers who specialize in contract law do is actually quite the opposite. They broker deals between people. So they bring people or companies together, and that kind of transactional practice really has this nice kind of service quality to it. You feel like you're coming into a situation and you're helping people get what they want, and they're happy with your services, and you're doing something valuable. So if you're interested in the law and if you're interested in contract law, they really are great fields, and I strongly encourage you to explore them.
David Horton, Professor of Law, UC Davis.